if you talk to someone like Ronan Kelly at Adchat, he'd say there's no point in investing in 25G PON. He'd say XGS PON is all you need now for residential. And then by the time these new applications come along that are VR, extended reality, you might as well invest in 50G PON, leapfrog 25G PON, and not bother making. So it's less investment, but there's clearly something required. Otherwise, everybody would just do it, wouldn't they? It's not like you just flip a switch and you've got the brilliant chipset there.
Hello and welcome to this special Telecoms.com podcast recorded from the show floor at Network X 2023. We're going to make it short and sweet, but we're delighted to have not one but two special guests, our good friends from CC Group, Anais and Chloe. Welcome you two.
Thank you. For having us. Lovely
I can't believe you haven't been on before.
I know, it's taken a while.
Anais did get a shout out on the last pod because she was out with us when we went and on the Lash with EE. A week or so
and
ago.
I do have evidence of your terrible dad dancing. So,
I think
if anyone wants to see that.
She played me that video. Yeah, she played me a video. We went and had dinner on Monday. She played me a video of me dancing with one of the owners of CC Group, and it was not pretty.
Well, like I say, if you need any incriminating evidence, please come to me.
The only thing is, it's not incriminating because I've never claimed to be able to dance.
Well,
so
I don't know. Not pretty bad. Diversity.
So anyway, it's great to have you on, and we do have a specific thing to do. Well, you've got a few things to announce, which we'll get to in a minute, and of course we've got Ian from Light Reading here as ever. So I'm going to just get straight into it and do what we would normally do. If it's just you and me, Ian, and just reflect on the show. Is there any sort of major themes that jumped out at you?
I mean, there's a lot going on, because there's so much grouped together under Network X now. So I think there's not one standout thing.
A good busy show.
Yeah. So there's various things in different categories. I think there was quite a big announcement.
Can I interrupt?
You can.
Remembered. I've got to give a shout out to our beer sponsor, which is Plume. I was just chatting to Plume before this, and I went, "If you fancy a shout out, bring us some beers." So they did. And the reason I got two, other than that I like drinking beer, is that Chloe's feeling a bit delicate. So she's donated her beer to me. Sorry, Ian, I grabbed it. You sleazy things, mate. Anyway, I promised I'd give him a shout out, so I have. I interrupted you.
So because I think the biggest one of the different parts that have now come together to be Network X used to be Broadband World Forum, probably, and this show is always very much about like fixed line tech, and you noticed Nokia with their very big presence. And they had this kind of pretty big announcement, I think, that came out today.
But this isn't going up till Monday. So we're recording on a Wednesday and it's going up.
It was under embargo, but it's not now.
All right, so, go for it. Knock yourself out.
So it's the deal with Google Fibre, which some people seem to have forgotten about as a company that's like investing in fibre rollout. And they're not. They never went to be as kind of large scale as I think some were hoping, or it's always been put pressure on the other operators, I think.
Whenever a massive, very rich company like Google gets involved in anything, you figure they could completely disrupt it if they want.
They could take over the world kind of thing, and it hasn't really happened. I mean, they don't disclose customer numbers, but they did say it's tens of thousands, I think,
which isn't all that,
on their older tech, which is kind of 2 gigabit per second up to 10 gigabit per second. The deal with Nokia is, which they were presumably already using, is to use this 25G PON technology, where you wouldn't get 25 gigabits per second to the home, but you certainly get, above 10 probably.
And just quickly recap on, because I find sometimes the fixed line stuff can get very arcane and very acronym ridden very quickly.
I don't know why you say that.
I've only been doing this for 10 years. 25G PON, what's the significance?
So it's passive optical network.
That's
it's building on the older passive optical network technologies that are already there, which is like point to multi-point technology. So you have like a splitter that serves multiple homes, which is why it's like shared bandwidth essentially. And it's gone through from, XGS PON is the one that's kind of being used at the moment, I think. I think like OpenReach would have that in the UK, for instance.
And that's X for 10, isn't it?
It's 10G PON, basically.
Yeah.
But that's the one that's kind of currently in deployment. 25G PON's only really been used for like 5G backhaul.
Right.
And like business premises.
So it's quite a big deal, both in
Google
terms of
Fibre
the deal win and the technology.
residential is the idea, to use it for residential. And then the next question is, why does anybody need 25 or they're positioning it as 20 gigabit per second. I'm not quite sure what it's used on that 20 gigabit per second figure, Google themselves. But
and they'll have some kind of metric like you can download Gone with the Wind in 2 seconds. Or
yeah, well, part of it's apparently because it's symmetrical. So the uplink speed is the same as the downlink speed. So one use case they said is that they've been trialing it with some engineering college in Kansas that's working on climate change studies, and they're having to upload large quantities of data into the cloud.
But presumably that's not residential then.
That isn't residential, you're right. So they have like a couple of business customers and like university stuff, but they insist that they want to have this used residentially. What they won't say is how many homes they get to serve with it. Like they won't, it's like you can request it, but presumably if one bloke in Austin goes, I want this, and nobody else in Austin, then are they going to?
How's it going to work?
I mean, the Nokia case for it is that once you've actually put the fibre in the ground, then everything else is about kind of changing the electronics on either side. And the thing about 25G PON is that it uses the same chipset in the line card as XGS PON, which is something called Quillian. It's like their own in-house silicon they've invested in. So if you've got that there, you can upgrade to 25G PON just by putting in a little bit of new optical equipment on one end and doing a software upgrade.
Is there any notional ceiling to a bit of fibre in the ground? Is there anything in the physical properties of that fibre that restricts how much?
Well, the upgrade path is through 50G PON and up to 100G PON, and that's fine. I mean, 50G PON is like here as well, I think. So this is a controversy. Okay. It's like 25G PON's not really a standard. Well, Nokia would probably say it is, but there was a big disagreement within the ITU a few years ago with some people pushing 25G PON led by Nokia and Huawei pushing 50G PON, and the ITU went behind 50G PON, and so the companies that are backing 50G PON. In fact, there's a Calix blog from April where they basically come out and say you shouldn't invest in 25G PON because it's a Nokia controlled system. They didn't actually say Nokia, but it's all like a single supplier, they said. That, I don't know what truth there is in that, because they've got this thing called an MSA, it's like a multi-service agreement where they've got other chipset vendors involved, and OpenReach is part of that, and AT&T. So, but if you talk to someone like Ronan Kelly at AdChat, he'd say there's no point in investing in 25G PON. He'd say XGS PON is all you need now for residential, and then by the time these new applications come along that are VR, extended reality, you might as well invest in 50G PON, leapfrog 25G PON, and not bother me. So it's less investment, but it's clearly something required. Otherwise, everybody would just do it, wouldn't they? It's not like just flip a switch and you've got the Quillian chipset there.
The increment's funny because GPON was 1 gig, XGS is 10 gig, and then so that's an order of magnitude of 10. You'd think you'd just go up in 10, didn't you? Apparently not.
Yeah, it's 25,
what do I know?
50, 100. So that's kind of one of the big news announcements from it. But as I say, it's how extensively it gets deployed by Google is the big question. Who would need to use it? I mean, I was when I was asking them questions, it was like, who really needs that these days? And they sort of pushed back. People used to come out with the same argument, didn't they? The copper days. I remember being one of those people writing stories saying, there's no point investing in fibre because you can do everything you need to do on your ADSL line.
Bet you feel like a bit of a twat now.
Well, everybody else did the same thing, so I was only doing what everybody else did. I wasn't being
following.
Well, to be fair, I said, what's the point in an iPad? It's just a big iPod.
Wow.
So we've all got.
We're all missing our words.
We've all got messy past when it comes to bad calls. I don't claim to know what I'm talking about. So just to add to that. Before we get into talking to Anais and Chloe about their stuff, other reflections for me on, I thought there was some great keynote speakers, Howard Watson on day one, and you're going to have to help me out here, Marie Noel, how's her surname go?
I think it's like Diego Lavassiere.
That'll do.
They're a laugh at me now.
She's got too many names, but she's a really good speaker.
So is he, apparently. He's got about 6 names.
Yeah, because he's Pierre Henry. Did you know, Pod, that he's actually Pierre Henry? There we are. There's the breaking news. I thought, I mean, I would like them to have been up there for longer and get into more depth, but it was good to hear from them. And she's the deputy CEO of Orange, and he's the CEO of
Europe.
Yeah, she's CEO of Europe. And we met her when we went to the French Open.
Yeah.
And she told me off for voting for Brexit.
She did. That doesn't surprise me.
No.
That's fair. I'm going to do it. Yeah.
Oh, you probably told me off for it at some
Well,
point.
probably, yeah. As a French woman.
There we go. Yeah.
I thought her speech was quite good. I mean, you know, it was maybe a little bit general, you could say, if you're being critical. But she did talk about things that are happening on the enterprise side with 5G now.
Yeah.
Like she said, all we've done in the
On
past
which more later, eh, Chloe?
is POPs.
I know, right?
Yeah, come back to it. She's going on about we've only ever done POPs in the past, proof of concepts, you know.
Yeah.
I'm sick of
I think saying POX as an acronym is unfortunate.
Yeah. Whereas now it's like proper commercial stuff starting to happen. So they've got this Barcelona port deal that is using standalone 5G. And it's like a hybrid deployment, they told me afterwards. So you can use, this is one of the reasons why they say the operator is important in the mix. Because there's all this concern that they'll get shunted to one side with 5G private deployments, and you'll use your own spectrum and build your own core.
Yeah.
But Arnaud Van Paris, who's the technical guy who was with her when I spoke to her afterwards, was saying, well, you need a sort of joined up service where it kind of links to the public network. And
right, yeah.
That's why it's better. That's one of the reasons it's better to have us in the mix, basically. Which is quite a good point.
Cool.
It seems like a good point, anyway.
Yeah, and again, it was plenty to write about. And I wrote up a panel yesterday that featured sort of UK altnets, City Fibre and Hyper Optic. I was reminded of their completely contrasting business model. City Fibre is entirely wholesale, and Hyper Optic is we build our own fibre and we flog services on the back of it, and they don't do any wholesale at all. And the City Fibre guy was definitely feeling a little bit, as you know, their brand is being a bit punchy and challenger and all that sort of thing. They don't like being called altnets, do they? I think they find it patronising. Yeah, they don't generally like it. Anyway, tough. What are you can do about it? He was just, what was he doing? He was saying that he thought the UK fibre market's ripe for consolidation, which could mean two things from a City Fibre. He's like their head of strategy from a strategic point of view. Either he's looking for their exit.
Was it Mark?
Yeah.
I think so. I'd have to look up the story. As usual, I haven't been organised enough to have my story up on my computer. That'll do. Mark. Or Dave. It was either Mark or Dave.
Not John.
A regular man's name here. Michael.
It was definitely a bloke.
Right.
Or someone who identified as one, anyway.
Surprise there for telecoms industry.
Yes, I know. Careful, I tried to make a joke about that once. It didn't go very well.
Well, I'm allowed.
Yeah, you're allowed. That's a good point. So he's either looking to get bought or they've got a bunch more money off Goldman Sachs and they're looking to do the consolidating. I think it's probably more likely the former. I think there was their exit strategy ultimately, and they've got so much VC money, and VCs normally have got an exit which is selling at a premium, isn't it?
But City Fibre seems like a kind of sustainable one, whereas a lot of the other outlets, where you get these sort of village-based things.
Yeah.
Incredibly local little things.
Yeah, there are so many. Yeah,
like I don't think a lot of it's been built. It's on paper, but nothing's actually happened.
Yeah.
So all they've achieved really, actually we were talking about this in the press room with our meter earlier, is to put pressure on Openreach to do things.
Yeah.
But all the fibre's Openreach and City Fibre a bit.
Yeah, and there's sort of double pressure. They put pressure on Openreach, just competitive pressure and all that sort of thing. But another thing he said, and it's quite funny because Howard Watson was still in the audience and he sat just behind me and I was sort of making eye contact with him. He was also going, how come BT doesn't wholesale off us? If they're at such arm's reach from Openreach, appropriately enough, then how come Openreach is their exclusive wholesale provider? Yeah. Why aren't they using City Fibre in areas that Openreach doesn't cover? Which I thought was a good point.
Yeah.
But there we are.
Well, because they are part of the same group, aren't they? So they'd rather pay them.
No, they're not. They're separate. Okay.
Right.
Right. Cool. Well, there's a couple of other themes that we're going to come back to, but they overlap with what we want to talk to Anais and Chloe about. And you basically got two announcements from the show. One is that you have done a study. I will not butcher it, and I'll just read your own headline. Telco's broadening channels and sources of influence when buying technology. So why don't I shut up now and let you tell me what the study's about?
Sure, yeah. So, we do these surveys and studies fairly frequently, sort of frequently-ish, every two
couple of
years. Yeah. Just to try and understand basically what our own clients, how they're trying to, what their customers are going through. So most of our clients are selling into the telco community. And so we've done a survey of telcos, 150 telcos in the UK, in the US, and in Europe, and to try and understand how they're buying technology. And the reason that we do that is it helps us to better consult our clients, basically, and put better marketing strategies together, marketing campaigns, etc.
Adding more value, doing more than just spamming out press releases.
Exactly, we do much more than that.
I never doubt that. 1 second.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's essentially what we do, and we really wanted to do it because the last one we did was in 2021, so it was just like the backdrop was it's still COVID
I seem to
time.
remember Telecoms.com doing quite well in that one you did.
Yes.
So I was particularly, I thought that was an
Generally,
awesome bit of research.
Industry media did quite well. Yeah.
No,
Yes, specifically.
I think we did better than light reading.
It's not a competition.
Yeah, it's not a competition. But yeah, so the last one was, COVID pandemic, which was really weird, and everything was just different. So we wanted to do a new one to see how that changed. And really the kind of short and long of it is that, now telcos are actually being a lot more diligent with regards to the content they go to when they're making purchasing decisions, but also the channels they go to. And they're going to many more of those rather than going to like top 1, top 2, top 3.
Oh, so by channels, you mean they're broadening the net in terms of vendors?
The marketing channels.
No, the marketing channels.
Marketing
Yeah. So instead of saying like, we mainly go to industry analysts and industry media, actually they're going to industry analysts, industry media, they're going to their peers, they're going to internal business analysts, they're going to
social
media,
vendor webinars, like the whole sort of gamut.
And that's a shift. Is that a shift that you've observed in the 2 years since you did the last one?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because before it seemed, when we looked at it's all based on percentages, right? And when you look at the percentages, when we did the last one, definitely, there was significant percentage points between like industry media versus, say, social media and its influence. Whereas now the percentages are very small. It's like 1% different, 2% different. It's not a lot between them. And that's the same. So we looked at, in doing the survey, we looked at both the start of the buying process, so very much when vendors are building awareness, and then when they're actually being selected for RFPs. And at both stages, it's showing that actually all of these different marketing channels have a similar impact and have similar value. So yeah,
it kind of makes sense as well if you think about like the economic times that we're in, sort of budget restrictions, less budget. They're doing more due diligence as to who they're going to partner with. They want to know more about what they can do, see what expertise they have, are they visible in the industry, and looking across more channels to make sure that they're actually making the right decisions, perhaps with less resource that they have now.
I think I've actually downloaded your report, so I do some preparation.
Yeah. Amazing.
And is this what you're just referring to? Just this,
absolutely.
So I'm just looking at a bar chart where there's about 10 or 15 different sources of influence, and they're all within about 10 or 20 percentage points of each other.
Exactly. And that's similar for content types and for channels of influence at both the awareness stage and the selection stage, which, tells us that, like Chloe said, telecoms vendors need to kind of change or rethink how they're approaching their marketing campaign, their marketing strategies. Because I think before it's like, let's just do some PR, let's go to, let's have some media relations, let's do some industry analyst relations, and that's it. But now you kind of need to think about, okay, well, how are we engaging from a social media perspective? What about podcasts? What about webinars? What about white papers?
Do you think anyone bases their purchasing decisions on this podcast?
All of them. We didn't ask that question, funnily enough.
No.
Maybe for the next one.
Missed opportunity.
It really is.
Isn't that a bit hilarious? Are you sure? You really thought this through, mate?
They're basing alcohol purchasing decisions on this podcast.
Yeah. I bet you Brewdog's done
we should go.
free advertising. Why aren't they sending us bribes, the amount of free advertising they get?
Wow.
And it's so easy to do. All you got to do is give us 4 becks and Plume gets a shout out. Cool. That's it. And then you did in your press release, you flagged up. You said industry analysts play an important role throughout the purchasing process. More than half of telcos use industry analysts to help identify and shortlist vendors. Why did you extract industry analysts as opposed to, say, trade media, to pick a random example.
Is that a bit of jealousy that?
Bit FOMO, yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Maybe we'll just go back and rewrite the report. Just to make it
Look, do you know what you should do? Just do a special Scott's ego version. Send it to me.
No, you know what? I think it's important for vendors to think about their industry analyst programs. Sometimes it's kind of an afterthought. It's not integrated as part of their PR and marketing programs. So that's why we kind of singled it out, and also the fact the value that they have in RFP processes shows how impactful it is, and it shouldn't be just we'll speak to a few analysts, we'll speak to a couple of journalists, and that's it, we're done. It needs to be more strategic. And we obviously have a dedicated industry analyst division that's headed up an ex-analyst. Thank you. And
Chris.
And Chris Sedgwick and Duncan Chappell is our head of analyst.
Oh yes, right, yeah.
So that's why really it's something that needs to not be an afterthought. It needs to be part of this whole, everything that you're doing. And really, that's the key message here. It's like everything needs to be integrated. It can't be, just the same way telcos always talk about not being siloed and not working in silos. This is exactly the same with PR and marketing.
So just to jump in on the industry analyst thing, I think they've always been influential throughout it. So from the report from a couple of years ago, it was the same. And I think in terms of the content types for awareness and selection, industry analyst reports actually are like the most influential content format during the buyer process. So actually industry analysts.
And I've always thought this is just pure gut feel. There's a sort of American term, one of the American terms I don't mind so much. They call it sanity checking.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes you'll just, and I do it when I'm writing. If I'm writing a story, I'll sanity check what Ian's written or what Reuters has written or what another trade press has written. Not to copy them, I hasten to add.
Don't show what I've written, I'm totally insane.
Well, yeah, sometimes I don't check out because you just go too deep. But you sanity check just to make sure, journalistically, it's as much to make sure I haven't missed an obvious angle and I'm an idiot focusing on one thing when everyone else is focusing on something else. Yeah. And I think there's a little bit of that, I imagine, with the purchasing process. You just want to check what broader consensus is.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, absolutely.
Validation, isn't it? It's third-party validation to make sure that you're making the right decision.
Yeah, and I think as well with the fact that these different channels have a similar impact and a similar influence. Actually, when you look at things like the influence of peers, for example, for telcos, it's very hard to influence a peer, right? I can try and bribe you with beer as much as possible, but you can only recommend me if you want to.
Well, I'm sure you'll be the first to reassure our audience that no matter how much you bribe me with beer, I still sometimes write stuff that pisses you off.
I can confirm.
That's the fun dynamic we have.
Well, it's called freedom of expression and all that.
You'd have it any other way, would you?
No, we wouldn't. But yeah, so, it's very hard to influence peers. But actually, if you think about it, peers are people, and people read trade media, they read business tech media, they read industry analyst reports, they watch vendor webinars, they use all of these different sources that are influential. So ultimately, it shows that vendors need to be visible in all of these different channels.
Totally, and it must be, I've never been in a position where I've had to suddenly make a decision on spending millions of pounds on some new... No, really, why not?
Funny.
No, they don't trust him with that stuff.
No, I wouldn't either.
Yeah, watching your video. I can hear that video. Was it? No, he's pretending it wasn't him, but it's suddenly gone quiet. Have you noticed?
We need to be more interesting or something, more entertaining.
This here. Was that over there? Oh, sorry, mate. Take it back. Where was I? I was just getting distracted. It sounded like someone was watching a YouTube video or something. I thought maybe it was him. He just got bored. I was just saying, obviously I haven't been in a position to spend tens or hundreds of millions of pounds on some big bit of tech, and it must be a nerve-wracking decision. And you try and be exhaustive, but ultimately you've got to take a punt at some stage, haven't you?
Well, yeah, at some stage. I mean, you've got to sign on the dotted line, right?
Yeah.
But it's probably an educated guess rather than a punt.
Well, I think a lot of decisions are. Well,
yeah, you'd hope so.
Educated guess.
Tomato.
Oh, right. Why are we going to go for this vendor? Just a pun.
Just feel it in my gut.
Yeah.
Just like the name.
The colour scheme. Like their logo.
Some saying nobody ever got fired from buying
IBM.
Yeah.
And it's
that was the 70s.
If something goes wrong, it's like, well, it was IBM. It's like, how was I to know? Whereas if you go and buy it off, widget company X.
Yeah.
You know,
No, that's a big one.
witching on about Open RAN or something. And then it doesn't work. It's like your CEO goes, well, what do you expect?
But I mean, that's kind of the reason why a lot of telcos have traditionally gone for the bigger vendors over the smaller vendors, because there's bigger risks. With the smaller guys.
I went with the number one player. How could I know they'd be shit?
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone else has been using them. Yeah.
Exactly. And everyone likes to be comfortable with who they pick. So.
Okay, so the general takeaway is that people increasingly are being more exhaustive in their research and their due diligence before they do that, and of course they listen to drunken podcasts for the final decider.
We just didn't want to include that because we didn't want people to feel left out. So that's why we
could have subdivided podcasts into sober ones. Okay, I'm going to. There's another bit that's relevant to another segment of your report, but I'm going to refer back, ask Ian. Another thing we were speaking about before we started recording, Ian, was that you've been chatting to a few operators about their attitudes to the public cloud.
Well, kind of chatting. I attended a session where I asked a couple of questions.
Oh, okay, right.
And then I did quite a long interview with Mark Henry, who's he's basically one of Howard Watson's right-hand men at BT. I haven't read the story yet, but he was talking partly about...
But you will have written it by Monday.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. But how tonight goes. But
there's this whole thing about... Because I think sometimes we get convinced that everything's moving to the public cloud, and it isn't really. There was a really good Omdia presentation, and I should know the guy's name. He's an Omdia analyst with a Greek name, apologies. But he did a really good presentation anyway on the outlook at the moment and where things stand. And the stuff that tends to have been put into the public cloud is like VSS and OSS, maybe some VSS and OSS, and your traditional IT workloads. But the telco workloads aren't. There's not a lot of examples of that happening. It's POX and Dish are the only two real examples. The AT&T deal with Microsoft gets misconstrued as a public cloud deal. It's actually I think this is a really interesting trend, is Microsoft taking its containers as a service platform, the same kind of stuff that you get from Red Hat or VMware or Wind River, and putting that in a telco's facilities.
Right.
So
in their own on-premise, as opposed to public
cloud. It's exactly the same as what.
And they've invested a fair bit in telco tech companies, haven't they, in the past?
Yeah. So they're basically moving it to the far edge, which is always a differentiator for people like Wind River. It's we can do the far edge and they can't. And that's a problem because you need low latency for a lot of the kind of cloud native 5G core stuff. Otherwise, it's not going to work. You need to be closer to the customer. As soon as Microsoft Azure and AWS start doing the same thing that Red Hat and Wind River and VMware are doing, I think those companies have got a big problem on their hands because they're never going to be able to develop large language models in the same way. All the other stuff that you could go and get from a hyperscaler, and if you buy it all from them in a package, you probably get a better per unit deal. So they become really attractive then as an option. So there's an interesting story about 3 UK who was one of the speakers. Actually, the guy I managed to ask a couple of questions of. Anil Darji, he's their chief network architect. Haven't met him before, but he's so they've got this Nokia 5G core at the moment that they're doing in a private cloud across about 20 facilities up and down the UK, and they've had that since 2017, so it's already 5 or 6 years old. It's VNFs, rather than cloud native, cloud containerized. So they want to move it on, and it sounds like the whole thing's up for grabs.
Okay.
We're in talks with. It's kind of breaking news because there weren't any other reporters, I don't think, in the session, but they're in talks with VMware, Microsoft Azure, and AWS
for their core.
So what they want to do is the core applications have to be on this, and the underlying platform have to be from the same supplier, or there has to be a kind of tight joint relationship where you can just have one point of contact. So something like Nokia with Red Hat. Nokia's given up doing its own, is giving up doing its own cloud platform. They had this big announcement with Red Hat a few months ago, where from now on Red Hat will be their primary cloud platform choice. And he was implying that'll be okay because as long as they can present one face to us and we have one entity to go through, that can work. But he's sounding really attracted to Microsoft as an option.
Okay.
And I said, well, isn't that public cloud? And he's like, no, like taking it, putting it in our facilities. And one of the reasons they like it is Microsoft's got the underlying containers as a service platform, and they bought a firm networks back in 2020.
Yeah.
So this is really scary for the Nordic vendors, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, the only deal they've got so far really is the AT&T one. But if they did get three, it's not a done deal at all. It's just
then back to what we were talking about with due diligence.
Yeah.
Another things people do is due diligence to see what their peers are doing.
Yeah.
And you get that sort of snowball effect. Once a few people legitimize it, they'll just think, all right, give it a
Sounds
go.
like it works.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Killed 3, you get a punt.
Yeah.
And then to go to bring it back to BT, I suppose as well, they're very keen to. Again, I think people think more's gone into the public cloud than it has, because you get people like Harmeen Mehta, who's the sort of head of BT Digital, harping on about it. Like it's a great thing and we're all 100% public cloud. But she's very much talking about the IT side of things.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
So on the telco workloads, there
Not so much.
not at all. No, that's all on a private cloud.
So that completely overlaps with another bit of your report.
Yeah,
Zoe, and I. So I've got a figure up here where you ask which areas of network is your business or will your business move to the cloud? And just to sort of summarize what I'm looking at, it's quite an even spread. So you subdivide it into moving entirely into the public cloud, entirely into on-premise private cloud, and hybrid, which is some combination of the two, isn't it?
Yeah.
And hybrid tends to be the biggest in nearly all of the categories.
Yeah.
And then the other two, there's a fairly even split. I mean, where you've got most hybrid, you've got like core network and security, where you've got most public cloud is things like enterprise, just like you were saying.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, generally, we found that, like you say, it's pretty even, but the most sensitive parts of telcos' networks, they want to keep to themselves on their own
Fairly
cloud.
understandable, isn't it?
Yes, actually, right. They don't want to hand that over to AWS or Microsoft, fair enough. And then the public cloud they're using for things like digital platform services and things that they're not. Okay, so, sorry. Things
So the
that.
producer's gesturing.
That's right.
I had to flick my hair, sorry.
Just got an excuse to go ahead.
So there's a bit of a difference between what they're putting in the public cloud and private cloud, but I mean, definitely the overwhelming majority said it's a hybrid cloud strategy. I think it was only 2%.
2%, said solely private.
Certainly on-premise.
Yeah.
And can you remember off the top of your head what percent said 100% public?
I think it was
All in.
It was 98%.
No, I'm thinking many of them. You said only 2% said they were saying
Just
totally,
private.
Is there an
Just
equivalent
all in.
stat for all in.
I don't think there was. No, I don't think any of them said all in for public.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think.
So it's nearly always mixed. And it's interesting actually in what you were just saying about Microsoft. I remember remember that Microsoft guy we chatted to at Digital Transformation World before this one?
Yeah.
Is it Rick Leviano?
Rick Leviano.
There we are.
Yeah.
Of course you're involved. They get everywhere.
I'm gonna say like a bad rash.
Your words, not mine. And in his pitch, and obviously you take it with a pinch of salt because everyone's going to say that what they need to say for their own sort of strategic purposes. But his pitch was that Microsoft tries to be more adaptable, more flexible across the hybrid thing. And what you were just describing about some of the more recent stuff seems to bear that out.
I think them coming into entering the private cloud space kind of complicates things a bit, because some of these deals still get pitched as like that AT&T Microsoft deal. AT&T's putting its 5G core in the public cloud. That was a lot of the headlines. In fact, I was pretty guilty of that as well. I think it was a misunderstanding of what they were doing. But you're still relying on a hyperscaler. Right. You've got your own facilities, and it's not shared infrastructure, and it's close to the end customer, so you don't get a latency problem. But you're still reliant on a hyperscaler for the technology. So,
one thing we talk about is like the old vendor lock-in thing.
Well, that's something I haven't talked much about here, but that I think is still a big worry in the industry.
But do you think if you've got Microsoft helping you do on-premise cloud, that gives you more wriggle room and more portability to drop them and get someone else, or are you just as locked in in that environment as if you've gone all into their public cloud?
I think you're probably not as locked in, because I think if you go into public clouds, when you start to take advantage of some of the other like special sauce that they've got in an IT environment, and like AI stuff that isn't really standardized between hyperscalers, and you use that and you can't go to another hyperscaler because they don't have an equivalent product kind of thing. That's when it becomes a real issue, I think. Whereas I suspect them coming into the private cloud area, they're more restricted in terms of what they do. The telco workloads are meant to do quite specific things. So it's maybe not, but it's a good question to ask. I mean, that's something that probably we should be asking over the next few weeks.
You should. If only I've been there.
Yeah, it should have been done.
And it feels a little bit like, compared to that time when like that DTW in 22 was all about the public cloud. They were mental on it. It feels like the hype cycle bit, that maybe was a bit of a peak, and now we're sort of calming down a little bit.
I think it's the same. I think it's even more now.
I think it's just as hyped.
I think more people are realising that you need a bit of a combination of both.
You can have a combination.
I
think
do all one.
I think there's more that's gone towards the public cloud since then, because it's a slow trend. And in the meantime, the big thing that's come along that's made it even more of an issue is large language models and generative AI, because nobody really has the resources to do the training of those that's required, apart from the hyperscalers. And
it was interesting. At the start of the week, there was an announcement with Deutsche Telekom and SK Telecom.
Yeah, but that was bullshit.
What was it?
Yeah, they're not building their own large language model.
That's true, because they're still partnering with
the large language model that they've got from Anthropic, which is backed by AWS.
Right.
Yeah, and Llama, which is backed by Meta.
And then where are they? They're not. The training of that large language model would not be done in DT premises. They're not buying NVIDIA GPUs and training stuff on their premises. They'll be.
So you thought it was a really superficial?
I thought it was bullshit. It's just like typical Deutsche Telekom to present something as we're doing something that they're not really.
I see.
Yeah, you read between the lines. They're fine tuning a large language model they've got from somebody else.
Doesn't that still have some validity?
Yeah. So it's not.
But don't try and make out that you're doing it from
scratch. Don't make out that you're actually doing it from scratch. They're not doing the engine, and they would be relying on a hyperscaler for the training of it and all that other stuff. But I mean, if the telcos had done this stuff from scratch, then we'd all be talking about the telcos, wouldn't we? They'd have like amazing share price movements, and rather than Microsoft having that.
Indeed. So we'll move on to one more thing that I know Chloe you're talking about, is you're creating a new bit of CC group.
We are. Yes.
With Chloe running it.
Yes.
So why don't you? I won't butcher it again. You tell me.
Sure. Yeah. It's called Next Gen Connectivity. So it's an extension of the mobile and telecoms division that Anais runs, and as well as our enterprise technology stream as well. So it's kind of a bit of a mishmash of the two. So I've always worked across.
It's where the Venn diagram overlaps.
Yeah, exactly. The point in the middle, exactly. And sort of been talking about the enterprise opportunity with connectivity and 5G, and it's really along the lines of as data demands for enterprises grow, there's lots of innovations happening in the networks, within data centers, and it's really this idea of, enterprise connectivity provision and helping vendors in this space that are going to be looking at that more as an opportunity, really.
All right, well, congratulations on
Thank
the new gig.
you.
And it's sort of, when you were describing it to me earlier, it's sort of, it seems very timely, because of course all the commercial interest in the perpetual search for the 5G use case and the 5G ROI is definitely in the enterprise direction.
Yeah,
I know.
Exactly.
It has been a bit elusive, hasn't it? To be fair.
Just a bit.
But if it's going to come anywhere, it's going to be an enterprise. So that's obviously, and that was a thing that came up. I think Mary Noel from Orange was talking about that a lot. And she had a use case of this deal with the Port of Barcelona, where they're doing all kinds of clever stuff with private networks and all that jazz. Yeah. It's still sometimes, for me, it's a bit hard for me to get my head around. It's a bit abstract. I'm thinking, obviously I haven't looked into that much, so this isn't a critique born of exhaustive research. But I'm just trying to wonder how things, for example, at the Port of Barcelona are going to be materially improved by all this. I suppose a lot of it's things like tracking and just general robust communication.
Yeah.
But I'm still just trying to picture it on the ground how...
Well, they really automated those ports.
Yeah.
So I think the reason the ports get cited is like a big opportunity, like, because there's so much going on.
Yeah.
You can use like robots, and, you do need like low latency connections, and you don't want cabling everywhere, you know, because you're in an outdoor environment. And so I kind of get that, the use case, and you know, you wouldn't use Wi-Fi for some of this stuff because it's unlicensed spectrum, and you wouldn't get some of the coverage that you get with 5G. So I kind of see it. It's where the operators fit in. That's the thing.
Yeah, well, maybe that'd be part of your challenge, Chloe, is sort of piecing together that jigsaw, because presumably other areas which you'll look at are what we for some reason have to call verticals. I prefer to call them industries. But the way this enterprise 5G thing is going to play out is a lot more partnership with other industries and with specialists in other industries. For example, people who know a lot about ports or whatever, which obviously isn't me.
Could afford me.
Yeah, exactly. And so is that a big part of what you're going to be doing? Is trying to sort of join those things together?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it is. You know, connectivity is there's going to be different needs for different businesses in different industries, like you say, ports, manufacturing. You know, there's going to be utilities, transport. They're all going to have different needs and different connectivity requirements. So yeah, the verticals thing definitely is going to be a focus.
And you're presumably optimistic that we're eventually going to piece all this together, or you wouldn't have bothered creating a new division?
Well, yeah, I hope so, because I'm not going to be out of a job.
This isn't going to
a waste of time.
We're just here for fun.
Just Chloe wanted a new job title.
That's it. It'd been a while, so you know.
Yeah, well,
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, but it's true. It's just the way, you know, like we said earlier, the way that the industry is moving along. You know, everyone's talking about Industry 4.0 and, you know, all of the opportunities that come with that, and it's only right that we move it along with it. It's a bit like me still being head of 3G. That wouldn't quite work with it. No. So yeah, that's a big reason behind, you know, kind of making sure that we're ahead of what's happening in the industry.
So we'll be having press trips to Barcelona then?
Oh, definitely.
Oh.
When
Was there like before, because I know everyone's on quite a tight time schedule, you got a train to catch. You're going to Eurostar, aren't you?
Yes, we are.
Which is so much better than a plane.
Oh yeah,
God,
it was fantastic.
Yeah, this is another shout out to Eurostar.
Yeah,
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And thank you. When
When it's on.
He's had a 3-hour delay in the past. We've had delays in the past that forced us to get drunk while we were waiting.
Oh, what a shame.
What are you going to do?
Well,
It's better than being
exactly.
bored.
Well, exactly.
But yeah, it's so much better. And I'm pleased. I'm sure that wasn't the main reason Informa decided to move to Paris, but I applaud the move for that reason alone.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's a massive place. I've never been to this
Yeah.
It's huge.
expo centre.
Yeah.
What's it called? The
Paris
Expo
Expo.
Centre.
Yeah, that'll do.
If it's not called that, it is now.
We've been here for 2 days. We've got no idea where we are.
It's called Dave. We're on one floor of one building, building 7.
Yeah.
It's right up there in size with something like the Rye. It seems even bigger than the
That's
XL.
bigger than the
Yeah. No, it's
So,
massive.
yeah, I just can't believe I haven't been here before.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a cool venue, and obviously hanging out in Paris as
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Great
worse
food.
things,
There are worse things.
Like before I just sort of wrap up maybe with some last thoughts about the show and all that sort of thing, I was just wondering if either of you two got any other stuff that you want to share about your announcement, or if we've covered it pretty well.
Well, no, I think main thing is it goes, well, it's going live today.
Yeah,
This
it's
will be
Monday.
out on Monday,
Yeah,
so it's
Monday.
going live today. And yeah, there's a full report available, and
Through the website, on the
through the
Insights
website,
page.
on the Insights
Might as well
page.
plug it.
Yeah,
Yes,
feel
on
free.
the Insights page, yeah, and
Nothing wrong with a plug.
nothing wrong with the plug. And yeah, if anyone has any questions or wants to hear more, then you know we're all ears.
Cool. And there'll soon be an update to it that says that Telecoms is great, especially Scott.
Which is what you're going to do in your write-up about this.
Yeah, of course. There you go.
Oh yeah, she's really pushing it. Isn't this enough?
No,
This
Absolutely
podcast enough.
never
This will
enough.
be imprinted in writing on the internet forever.
What was I thinking? Yeah, just a few people I've chatted to on the show floor definitely reflected on how this show is called Network X, and it's a combination of what used to be previous standalone events brands, 5G World, Broadband World Forum, and Telco Cloud. And of those three, the general feeling is the Broadband World Forum is like the dominant
Yeah.
theme at something like this. I was actually just thinking out loud, I have no idea if there's anything to this. when I was wondering why, and I was thinking, well, there is quite a big mobile trade show.
Yeah.
But I'm not aware of a really big fixed trade show.
It's like FTTH Council Europe events, aren't they?
Right.
I don't know how big they are.
So maybe that's one of the reasons, but that's definitely felt
The
quite
Terrapin
expanding.
ones are
Connected
quite,
Britain.
Connected
Yeah.
Britain and all that.
Which is-
They're all very fixed.
It's very UK based, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As in
And
quite
does that
like
tend to be quite
but
fixed?
Yeah.
Very much so.
I know
That's,
the internet.
that's
Yeah.
all about the like the fibre
Yeah.
outlets.
Right,
I
all
mean,
the
that's
city
like
fibre and all that.
competitor of ours, Terrapin, but that's big though.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was wondering, and maybe another reason is just that there's a lot going on in the fixed space right now. All your ponds.
I mean, if you look at the show floor,
Yeah.
you would say there is a lot
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah,
Sure.
definitely.
A lot of
Um,
experiences.
So yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and I do think the show. I don't know any of the numbers, but anecdotally, it felt bigger and busier than last year. So that's all pointing in the right direction, and my employers will thank me for saying so. So I think unless there's Ian, do you have any other last thoughts about the show?
Yeah.
No. Well,
Now pretty well.
oh,
I have no
Ian's
thoughts.
got City of the Month. What's City of the Month? Don't make me say that. Right.
Regina.
Yeah. We get these really obscure. I mean,
Yeah, I
you
know,
listen to-
yeah.
we get these really obscure places that for some reason I don't understand how somewhere in the back end of Canada is bigger than London.
Must be like engineers from Bell Labs or something.
Bracknell, yeah, well that's a bit more understandable. What was it? Santa Rosa, which is California, is it? But yeah, that Saskatchewan one,
Wow,
that's obscure.
that is obscure.
Cool, nice one. So yeah, we'll wrap it up so you're not having to leg it to make your train.
Thank you.
But it's great to have you on.
It's great to
Thank
be
you.
here.
Welcome
Thank
back.
you. Thank you.
And yeah, that's it for now. Make sure you join us for the next one.